I woke up to the smell of coffee and the soft rustling of trees outside the cabin window. The sun was just starting to filter through the lace curtains, casting golden patches on the hardwood floor. It was the morning of my wedding, and everything felt just about perfect. I'd always pictured getting married in a church with big oak doors and stained glass windows, but she wanted something simpler. A rustic cabin wedding, she'd said, with that gleam in her eyes that I never could say no to. So we rented this private lodge up in the Smokies, surrounded by pine trees and far enough from town to feel like we were in another world. I padded barefoot across the floor, grabbed a mug from the kitchen shelf, and poured myself a cup of the dark roast she liked to keep on hand. The aroma filled the room, but my thoughts were already drifting to her. Emily. My girl. My soon-to-be wife. We'd been together for 3 years. Met at a hardware store, of all places. I was trying to return a faulty chainsaw, and she was arguing with the cashier about paint swatches. I don't even remember who spoke first, it was just one of those things that felt meant to happen. Like gravity. One day I was just a guy living a plain old life in Kentucky, and the next, she was in it, making it brighter and louder and more complicated in the best way. The wedding wasn't till 3, but guests were already arriving. We'd hired a local company to handle transportation since the lodge sat up a narrow dirt road that most sedans wouldn't survive. One of those big vans with a sliding door showed up around 10, and I waved from the front porch as folks started piling out. Cousins, college buddies, people I hadn't seen in years. All of them smiling and hollering my name like I was some kind of celebrity. I didn't see Emily that morning. Bad luck, her sister had said, half joking, half serious. She wants the reveal to be special. So I stayed busy. Helped my brother tie ribbons around the fence posts, made sure the barbecue guy knew where to park, checked the generator twice just to be safe. Every now and then I'd look up toward the main cabin, wondering what she was doing up there. Getting her hair done, probably. Laughing with her bridesmaids. Sipping champagne. At some point around noon, a different van pulled up. The shuttle company was rotating drivers, I guess. This one wasn't one of the older guys with gray hair and clipboards. This one was young, mid-20s maybe, lean build, black curls tied back in a bandana, aviators perched on his nose like he thought he was Tom Cruise or something. He hopped out of the van, gave me a lazy salute, and leaned on the hood like he had all the time in the world. "Hey," I said, walking over. "You the new driver?" "Yup," he said, cracking a grin. "Name's Jace." "Cool," I replied. We got folks arriving all afternoon, mostly from the hotel down in Gatlinburg. "No problem," he said, flashing that same easy smile. "Congrats, man." I nodded and went back to the porch, trying not to think too much about the guy's smile or the way he kept his shirt unbuttoned like he was on a music video set. He was just a driver, nothing more. Funny how your gut can whisper things your brain doesn't want to hear. By the time the clock hit 2:30, the whole place had come alive with music and chatter and the clink of glass. The air smelled like smoked brisket and pine needles, and laughter bounced off the trees like it had nowhere else to go. I stood out near the edge of the clearing, watching everyone gather under the big white canopy we'd set up. My brother passed me a cold bottle of water and clapped me on the back. "You nervous?" he asked. I shook my head. "Nah. Just ready to see her." And I was. God, I was. I kept imagining the way she'd look coming down the little dirt path between the rows of chairs, lace dress brushing the leaves, smile wide and eyes locked on mine. I'd never been much for grand declarations, but I'd written some vows I was proud of. Honest ones. Things like, I'll take the garbage out when I say I will and I promise to listen, even when I think I'm right. Real stuff. Stuff that builds a life. I was fiddling with my tie when her sister ran up to me, cheeks flushed, breath quick. "She's ready," she said, grinning. "Yeah?" She nodded, then leaned in and added quietly, "She looks beautiful." I swallowed a lump in my throat and followed her around the back way, taking the path through the trees to where I'd stand with the officiant. The guests were all seated, fanning themselves with the printed programs. My mom blew me a kiss. My uncle gave me a thumbs up. It all felt like a movie, and I was the guy about to win it all. The music started, some soft acoustic tune Emily picked from a playlist she'd titled Forever Vibes. Then the bridesmaids came. Then her niece, dropping flower petals like confetti. And then, finally, Emily. I don't even have the words, not really. She looked like everything I'd ever wanted and then some. Her hair was pulled back in loose waves, her dress hugged her in a way that made my heart beat faster, and her eyes, they found mine right away. Locked in, like we were the only two people on earth. She took my hand at the altar and whispered, "Hi," and I whispered it right back. There was something in her voice, maybe a tremble, but I figured that was nerves. I had them too. The good kind. We said our vows, we exchanged rings, and when the officiant finally said, "You may kiss the bride," I didn't hesitate. I pulled her close and kissed her like I meant it, because I did. The cheers were loud. People stood and clapped. I could feel my heart thumping like a drum in my chest. We were married. And for a little while, everything stayed perfect. We danced our first dance to an old Otis Redding song. We cut the cake, fed each other bites that ended in laughter and icing smears. My dad told an embarrassing story about me trying to grill a hot dog with a blowtorch when I was 10, and everyone howled. The whole night felt wrapped in a warm glow. But somewhere around dusk, when the lanterns flickered on and the last rays of light gave the sky a soft, honey-colored haze, I noticed she was gone. Just slipped away. No one else seemed to notice, but I did. Her absence settled over me like a chill. I asked her sister if she'd seen her. She probably went to freshen up, she said, waving it off. That made sense. Emily was always one to touch up her lipstick or adjust a strap. So I waited. I stood by the edge of the dance floor, watching my cousins swing each other around like square dancers, and waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Something in me, it's hard to explain, started humming. Not a sound, not quite a thought either. Just a knowing. I wandered behind the cabins, past the catering tents and into the row of guest shuttles. There were 3 of them now, parked in a crooked line near the edge of the woods. I was about to head back when I saw the last van's side door slide open, slow, like someone was trying not to make noise. Out stepped Jace. His bandana was gone. His shirt was untucked. His hair looked damp, like sweat had run down the back of his neck. He didn't see me at first. He lit a cigarette, took one drag, and let out a breath like he'd just run a marathon. Then Emily stepped out. Barefoot. Dress bunched up in her hands. Lipstick smeared. For a second, the world didn't move. It didn't make sense. My brain scrambled to explain it. Maybe she tripped and he helped her up. Maybe she got something on her dress and asked for a towel. Maybe, but the look on her face erased all of that. The wide eyes. The guilty flush. The way she froze when she saw me. Jace looked over and muttered something under his breath before tossing the cigarette and walking away like it was just another gig to him. Emily didn't speak. Neither did I. I just turned around and walked back to the reception. The music was still playing. I didn't know where my feet were taking me. Just that I had to keep walking. Back through the trees. Past the flickering light strung between the pines. Past my cousin still laughing like this was the happiest night in the world. The music had changed to something upbeat, one of those country pop songs Emily liked, the kind with fake banjos and too much snare drum. It didn't sound right anymore. Nothing did. I felt numb, like someone had pulled the plug on everything warm inside me. People clapped me on the back as I moved through the crowd. Hell of a wedding, man. You did good. She's a keeper. I nodded. Smiled, even. Just enough to pass. Just enough to make it back to the table where I'd left my drink. I sat down slow, holding that glass like it might anchor me to the earth. Emily hadn't followed me. At least, not right away. I stared out across the clearing, watching everyone enjoy the party we'd planned together, every detail from the napkin colors to the damn cake flavor. I should have been proud. I should have felt married. Instead, I felt like a guy sitting in someone else's dream. About 10 minutes passed before she showed up again. Her hair was brushed now. Lipstick reapplied. She walked like nothing had happened, like she'd just stepped out for a breath of air. But when she reached me, she didn't say anything. Just slid into the seat across from mine and looked at me with those soft brown eyes that used to make my chest ache in a good way. Now they just looked scared. I didn't speak. I was afraid my voice would come out too loud, or too low, or too broken. She leaned in a little. "Can we talk?" she asked, real quiet. I stared at her for a long second. "Here?" "No. Somewhere else." She stood and walked off toward the trail behind the main cabin. I waited a beat, then followed. I had to. I needed something, answers, maybe. Or just, truth. The woods swallowed up the music once we got far enough in. We stopped at a little wooden bench near the old fire pit where we'd roasted marshmallows with friends the night before. She turned to me. Her hands trembled. "I didn't mean for that to happen," she said. I didn't respond. It wasn't like I planned it, okay? I was feeling overwhelmed. The morning, the dress, all the people, and he was just there. I looked down at my hands. My knuckles had gone white from how hard I was gripping my own thighs. "You cheated on me," I said, and it didn't even sound like my own voice. "On our wedding day." "I know." Her voice cracked. "I don't even know what's wrong with me. I swear to God, I love you. I just..." "Just what?" She didn't finish. She just put her face in her hands and started to cry. I stood there, watching the woman I'd just married fall apart under the weight of what she'd done. I thought I'd feel rage. I thought I'd want to yell, to throw something, to tear that white dress into ribbons. But I didn't. I just felt hollow. Like someone had scooped me out from the inside. "Did you sleep with him?" I asked. Her crying stopped, just for a second. Her breath hitched. "Yes." The word landed like a stone. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just final. I sat down beside the fire pit and stared at the ashes from last night. "You know what hurts?" I said after a while. "Not just that you did it. But that it was so easy. Like one minute we were about to start forever, and the next minute you were in a van with some guy who drove you up here. It wasn't easy," she whispered. "It was quick." She didn't argue with that. The night had grown quiet around us. I could hear crickets, far off and steady, like background noise in a dream I didn't want to be in. "I should leave," she said. "I'll get my things. Go stay with my sister." And she meant it. I could see it in her face. She was ready to disappear. Just like that. But something in me didn't want that. I didn't want to be the guy standing in the wreckage, telling people she ran off, or that the marriage ended before the cake was cut. I didn't want my mom crying or my dad trying to act like it was some lesson I was better off learning early. More than anything, I didn't want her to become a ghost in my life. So I said, "No." She blinked. "What? You're not leaving?" "Not yet." "Why?" "Because I still love you," I said. "And that means something. Even now. Even if it hurts." She looked at me like she didn't know whether to cry harder or fall into my arms. And me? I didn't know what I was doing. I only knew I wasn't ready to throw it all away. Not yet. We walked back to the reception together. Not holding hands. Not speaking. Just two silhouettes in the dark, side by side but miles apart inside. I kept telling myself to breathe, to stay present, to not let my thoughts outrun my feet. But it was hard. Every step I took back toward those people, our friends, our families, I felt like a liar. We were supposed to be husband and wife. Supposed to be dancing under string lights and laughing at inside jokes and feeling that full-belly joy people feel when everything's going right. But under my shirt, my chest ached like it had caved in. And still, I couldn't bring myself to blow the whole thing up. So I kept walking. When we reached the clearing again, nobody looked twice. Nobody seemed to notice anything was wrong. Emily slipped away to freshen up again, this time for real, I guess, and I stepped back into the rhythm of the night. I made a toast. I clinked glasses. I posed for photos with my arm around my new wife's waist, pretending like her touch didn't feel foreign now. I danced with my mother to "You Are the Sunshine of My Life," while she cried soft tears against my shoulder. I smiled for her. I smiled for everyone. And every smile cost me something I couldn't explain. Later, when the crowd thinned out and folks started heading back to their cabins or shuttles or makeshift campsites, Emily and I stood together in the middle of the clearing. The fire pit crackled behind us. The DJ was packing up. The night was nearly over. "You still want me to stay?" she asked, eyes cast low. I nodded. We made vows. They didn't come with an escape clause. I broke them already. I know. Silence settled again. She wrapped her arms around herself like she was cold. "We should get inside," I said. "Everyone's expecting us to go to the honeymoon suite." We walked there slowly, not touching, like we were strangers trying to figure out the steps of a dance neither of us had practiced. When we stepped inside the room, it hit me all over again. Rose petals on the bed. A bottle of champagne on ice. A handwritten card that read, "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs." I stood there staring at it, wondering how something so small could feel like a punch to the gut. Emily stepped into the bathroom without a word. I heard the faucet run, then the quiet rustle of her dress coming off. I sat on the edge of the bed, shoes still on, and tried to remember why I wanted to stay. Why I hadn't just told her to leave. Why I hadn't told everyone the truth. The truth. That word kept circling me like a vulture. When she came out, she was wearing an oversized t-shirt, mine, probably, and no makeup. Her face looked softer, younger, worn down in a way I didn't recognize. She walked past the bed, crawled under the covers, and turned her back to me. I lay down beside her. Not touching. "Are you going to hate me forever?" she asked into the darkness. "I don't hate you." "Then what do you feel?" I stared at the ceiling. Like I lost something I didn't even get the chance to have. She was quiet a long time. "I don't know why I did it," she finally whispered. "It's like, something in me just broke open for a second." "Then fix it," I said. "If you care. If you meant what you said back there, about loving me, then fix it. Because I can't carry this by myself." "I'll try," she said. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't fully grasped until right then: forgiveness isn't a clean thing. It's not a bright, pretty ribbon you tie around a bad memory. It's messy. Ugly. It's waking up beside someone who broke your heart and still choosing not to walk away. So I didn't. I turned toward her and pulled the blanket over us both. I didn't touch her. Not yet. But I didn't leave, either. And for that night, that was enough. The morning sun came too early. It slipped through the curtains in thin, golden lines, cutting across the room like reminders that time hadn't stopped just because I'd wanted it to. I laid there with my eyes open, listening to the steady hum of the air conditioner and the faint rustle of Emily breathing beside me. She was curled away from me, her back to my chest, just like the night before. We hadn't touched. We hadn't kissed. We hadn't said, "I love you," like couples normally do on their first night of marriage. Because we weren't a normal couple anymore. I sat up slowly, careful not to wake her. My head throbbed, not from drinking, but from the weight of it all. My brain felt bruised. My heart, well, it felt like it had been stepped on in cowboy boots. I went to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, and stared into the mirror. I looked like a guy who'd been married and betrayed all in the same 12 hours. My tie was still on the floor. My shirt was wrinkled. My eyes looked hollowed out. But I didn't cry. I think I'd done all my crying on the inside already. When I came back out, she was awake. Sitting up in bed, her knees pulled to her chest. Her eyes met mine like she was scared to speak first. "Morning," she said, voice small. "Morning," I answered. I sat on the edge of the bed, not close. Just enough to be in the same frame. "I didn't sleep much," she added. "Me neither." We sat in silence again. Seemed like that was becoming our language. Eventually, she said, "What now?" I sighed. "Well, first we get dressed. Then we go eat leftover wedding cake with everyone and pretend like we're glowing." "I mean after that," she said. "What happens when we go home?" That question sat between us like a suitcase we hadn't unpacked yet. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I meant what I said last night. I want to try." Her eyes started to water again, but she blinked it back. "I didn't deserve that," she whispered. "Any of it. Your kindness, your patience, the fact you didn't throw me out and tell the whole world what I did." "No, you didn't," I said. "But I didn't marry you because you're perfect. I married you because I thought we'd face life together, good and bad." She looked down. "You think we can come back from this?" "I don't know. But I'm willing to find out." That was the truth. Maybe the hardest truth I'd spoken in a long time. We dressed in silence. She slipped on a white sundress that still carried the scent of flowers and perfume and the chaos of yesterday. I wore jeans and a button-up that I'd packed for the morning after brunch. We looked like any other newlyweds if you didn't know better. By the time we walked down the dirt path toward the main cabin, the rest of the family was already up and buzzing. Someone had started a coffee pot. My uncle had a Bloody Mary in hand, still in his tuxedo pants and flip-flops. A few of my cousins shouted, "Newlyweds," like they were in a movie. I smiled. She smiled. We played the part. Because that's what you do when the truth's too heavy to carry around in front of everyone. We cut into the leftover cake. Ate it on paper plates. Took a few more photos that would end up framed in someone's hallway, a snapshot of a lie dressed up as a celebration. Every time someone said, "You guys are perfect together," I felt a sharp twist somewhere deep inside me. But I didn't correct them. I just kept smiling. Eventually, folks started loading up their cars and vans. Hugging. Saying their goodbyes. My mom held Emily a little too long, whispering something into her ear I couldn't quite hear. Emily's eyes filled again, and she nodded. When the last car pulled away, the two of us were left alone on the porch of the cabin. "Ready to go home?" I asked her. She nodded. As we packed our things and drove down the winding dirt road in my old pickup truck, I kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other resting on my leg. She reached over and set her hand on mine. And for the first time since that awful moment in the woods, I let her. We didn't speak much on the drive. But we didn't need to. There's a kind of quiet that exists after a storm. Not peaceful, exactly, but still. A place where maybe things can grow again. I didn't know if we were going to make it. I didn't know if love was enough to fix the kind of hurt that lives in your bones. But I knew I wasn't done trying. And I think, deep down, neither was she. The first week back home felt like living in a stranger's house. We'd unpacked our bags, hung the "just married" sign on the laundry room door like some sick joke, and put the leftover decorations in a box in the attic. But nothing felt normal. Our routines were hollow. Every breakfast tasted like cardboard. The silence between us was no longer peaceful, it was loaded. Heavy. Like there was a ticking bomb under the floor, and neither of us knew if it had been defused. We slept in the same bed, but not in the same way. She stayed to her side. I stayed to mine. Our bodies used to reach for each other in the dark without thinking. Now, even brushing hands under the covers felt like trespassing. I started going to bed later, just to avoid the awkward crawl-in moment. I'd sit on the couch, TV off, lights low, nursing a warm beer and trying to make sense of what I was doing. Why I hadn't walked out. Why I wasn't angrier. But the truth was, I was angry. I just didn't know where to put it. I didn't want to throw it at her, not after seeing the way she broke down in that forest clearing. Not after how small she'd looked the morning after, asking if we'd make it. She wasn't the same woman who'd betrayed me in the woods with some truck driver. She was a different version now, quieter, bruised in spirit, trying to show up even when she didn't know how. And maybe I was a different man too. One night, about 10 days after the wedding, I came home from work and found her in the kitchen, cooking dinner. That used to be my job. I liked to cook, but lately she'd been taking it over. I think it was her way of reaching for something. A routine, maybe. A peace offering. She had on one of my old flannel shirts, sleeves rolled, hair tied up. The radio was playing quietly, and the smell of garlic and onions filled the air. "Hey," she said when I walked in. Like we were still married in the normal way. "Hey," I answered, setting my keys on the counter. She turned off the burner, then leaned against the sink, wiping her hands on a towel. "I made stroganoff. Your favorite." I nodded. "Thanks." We ate together at the table in silence for a while. Forks clinking. Glasses sweating. The kind of silence that used to be comfortable but now felt like walking a minefield barefoot. "I've been thinking about therapy," she said, finally. I looked up. "For us," she added. "Or just me? I don't know. I need help. I know that. I've been trying to figure out what made me do what I did, and all I've come up with is shame. Shame and fear and a really twisted moment of self-destruction." She stared down at her plate. "But if I want to be worthy of you, I have to figure out what's broken in me." I didn't know what to say. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But words like worthy felt too clean for the mess we were in. Still, I said, "Okay." And I meant it. That night, we sat on the couch together for the first time since the wedding. Not touching, but sitting close. We watched a dumb sitcom we used to love, and we even laughed once or twice. It wasn't healing, exactly, but it was a crack of light in a long tunnel. Later, as we got ready for bed, she said, "Do you want to try sleeping closer tonight?" I looked at her for a long second. Then nodded. When we lay down, I let her scoot toward me, slow and uncertain. Her head found the space between my chest and shoulder, and I wrapped an arm around her without thinking too hard about it. And in that quiet, in that simple act, I felt something loosen in me. Not forgiveness, not completely, but maybe the beginning of it. "I love you," she whispered. I didn't say it back. Not because I didn't feel it. But because saying it meant something different now, and I needed time to find the version that matched this new, cracked shape we were trying to live in. I held her tighter. That was my answer. Forgiveness isn't a moment. It's 1,000 little choices that keep piling up until one day, you realize you've been building something. And that's what it felt like, brick by uneven brick. Some days, I felt like we were constructing a new house on the ruins of the old one. Other days, it felt like we were still standing in the rubble, trying to convince ourselves the roof hadn't collapsed. But little by little, we found new rhythms. She started seeing a therapist once a week. I never asked for details, and she never forced them on me. All I knew was, she came home quieter, calmer. She'd sit next to me on the porch afterward and just be. No pressure. No performances. Sometimes she'd reach for my hand, and sometimes I let her take it. One Saturday, about a month after the wedding, we went grocery shopping together for the first time since we'd been back. It seems small, I know, but everything felt like a test. Would I flinch if someone congratulated us in the cereal aisle? Would I picture her with him again if we passed a delivery truck on the highway? Turns out, yeah. I did flinch. And yeah, I did picture it. But I didn't let go of the cart, and I didn't walk away. Back at home, we unpacked the bags side by side. She handed me the eggs. I handed her the bread. No arguments. No tension. And I realized how rare that kind of quiet had become between us. Afterward, we sat on the floor of the living room, eating watermelon straight from the bowl. Sunlight streaked through the blinds, and for a second, it felt like a day from our old life. The life before the wedding. Before the confession in the woods. She leaned her head against my shoulder and said, "I think about him sometimes." I froze. She must have felt it, because she added quickly, "Not because I miss him. I don't. I think about how stupid I was. How careless. How I let 5 minutes with a stranger almost cost me everything." I stayed quiet. "It wasn't even good," she whispered. I didn't need to know that. But weirdly, it didn't hurt like I thought it would. Maybe because I wasn't picturing passion or romance anymore. I was picturing chaos. Self-sabotage. A fire set with shaking hands. "You could have told me before the vows," I said. "I know. You could have told me right after it happened." "I know that too." We sat there, the weight of everything we didn't say stretching out between us like shadow. Then I took a deep breath and said, "You ever think about leaving?" She pulled back to look at me. "Since the wedding?" I nodded. "Every day," she admitted. "But not because I want to. Because I worry you'll wake up and realize you should have left me in the forest." That hit harder than I expected. Because truth was, I'd had those thoughts too. Not because I didn't love her, but because loving her had started to feel like carrying a backpack full of bricks everywhere I went. "I won't leave," I said finally. "If I wanted out, I'd have taken it the second I knew." She nodded, and there were tears in her eyes again. I'd gotten used to those. Her tears didn't knock me down anymore, they were just part of the healing. Honest. Messy. Human. That night, she crawled into bed earlier than usual and curled into me like she was afraid I'd disappear if she didn't hold on tight. I wrapped my arms around her and listened to her breathing slow. Eventually, mine matched hers. And for the first time since the wedding, I slept all the way through the night. A few months after the wedding, people finally stopped asking how married life was treating us. Thank God. I think they got the message after enough half-smiles and vague answers. We're taking it one day at a time, I'd say, and that was the truth. I wasn't going to lie and paint a pretty picture. But I wasn't about to air our wounds at barbecues either. At work, I threw myself into projects, grateful for the distraction. Hammering nails into wood didn't ask questions. It didn't flinch when memories crept in. It just let me be a man doing a job, nothing more. Back at home, she kept showing up in quiet ways. She'd bring me lunch if I worked late. Leave little notes in the toolbox. One day, I found a photo of us from our second date tucked between my socket wrenches. We were younger, smiling, covered in ice cream. It made me sit down on the garage floor and just stare at it for a while, like maybe the version of us in that picture had something to say to the people we'd become. One evening, she brought up the idea of renewing our vows. Not soon, just someday. I don't want the memory of that day to be what we carry forever, she said, tracing the rim of her coffee mug with her finger. I want to give you a real wedding day. One you can think back on without a stomach full of glass. I didn't answer right away. Truth was, I didn't know if I wanted that. The pain of the first wedding was still too raw, too knotted into the fabric of my heart. But I appreciated the offer. The gesture. The acknowledgement that she understood just how much had been broken. Instead of answering, I reached over and laced my fingers through hers. Sometimes that was enough. That weekend, we went hiking. It was her idea. Said she wanted to prove the forest didn't own our story. That it didn't have to stay the place where everything went to hell. So we packed water bottles, granola bars, and a whole lot of nervous energy. We drove out early and hit a trail not far from the one we'd used after the wedding. The air was cooler this time. The trees were more forgiving somehow. Or maybe we were just stronger. We didn't talk much during the hike. Just walked in rhythm, side by side, our boots crunching leaves, the smell of pine thick in the air. Every now and then, she'd look at me like she was checking to see if I was still okay. I was. Mostly. About halfway through, we came across a clearing with a bench. We sat there for a while. Neither of us said it, but we were both thinking about that other clearing. The one with the panic and the truth and the hurt that cracked me wide open. But this one was different. This one felt quiet in a good way. You still love me? She asked suddenly, eyes on the sky. I looked over at her. Her hands were folded in her lap, and the wind was lifting strands of her hair like a soft wave. Yeah, I said. I do. She nodded, like she needed to hear it but also knew it already. And for the first time since she'd told me the truth, I said something I hadn't dared until that moment. I forgive you. It wasn't loud. It didn't echo. But it felt like a bell ringing inside my chest. Her eyes filled instantly, but she didn't cry, not really. She just leaned her head against my shoulder and whispered, "Thank you." We sat like that for a long time, letting the breeze pass over us, letting the forest bear witness to something new. Not a vow, not a promise. Just a quiet beginning again. We finished the hike, hands clasped the whole way down. The funny thing about forgiveness is that you think once you say it out loud, "I forgive you," you'll feel lighter. Free. But that's not how it works. Not really. Saying it was a milestone, sure. But it didn't erase the film reel in my mind. The one that liked to play at the worst times, right before sleep, or while tying my boots, or whenever a delivery truck rumbled past our house. It didn't help that one of those trucks showed up at our door a few weeks after that hike. I was working in the garage, oil on my hands and a busted lawn mower splayed out in front of me. She was inside doing laundry or reading or whatever people do when they're trying to live a quiet life. Then I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. I glanced up, and there it was. A white shuttle van with the same company logo I'd seen on that godforsaken wedding weekend. Time slowed. My heart didn't pound, it froze. Cold and still like ice water down the spine. The driver wasn't him. Of course not. But it didn't matter. The van was the trigger, not the man behind the wheel. I stood there frozen, socket wrench in hand, watching as the guy hopped out and casually grabbed a small box from the back. He walked up to the porch and rang the bell, whistling a tune that I recognized but couldn't place, something too cheerful for that moment. She opened the door. Smiled politely. Signed for the package. I watched every second. I shouldn't have, but I did. She looked down at the box, confused. Then she looked up and noticed me staring. We locked eyes. Hers widened slightly, like she realized exactly what I was thinking. She didn't say anything. Just walked the box over to me and set it on the workbench. "Printer ink," she said. "I must have clicked the wrong shipping method." I nodded, but I didn't say a word. That night, I barely touched my dinner. The fork felt heavy in my hand, and her voice, though soft and calm, seemed like it was coming from underwater. She finally set her napkin down. "You want to talk about it?" I shook my head. But she talked anyway. "I saw your face when you saw the van. I didn't look up. I know what it did to you. What it brought back." I cleared my throat. "It wasn't him." "I know. But it might as well have been." That's when I snapped, not loud, not angry. Just a quiet burst of everything I'd been swallowing. "You gave me that for life, you know? That reaction. That second guessing. That pit in my gut. Every time I see something that looks like that day, I get transported back there. You left a landmine in my head, and now I gotta tiptoe around it forever." Her face crumpled, and for a second, I regretted saying it like that. But only for a second. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know. I hate that I did this to you. I know." She reached across the table for my hand, and for a long moment, I didn't move. Then, slowly, I gave it to her. Not because it felt good, but because she was the only one who could hold it in that moment. "I don't expect you to forget," she said, her voice low. "I just hope, with time, those triggers come less often. And when they do, I'll still be here." We sat like that for a long time, just breathing together in the quiet aftermath of old echoes. That night, she curled up next to me in bed the way she always did now, facing me, not away from me. I stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours. Then I turned toward her. Just enough to feel her breath on my chest. I didn't sleep well. But I didn't pull away. Time didn't heal everything. That was a lie people told themselves to make it through the day. What time did do was stretch the distance between the worst moment of your life and the man you became afterward. And somewhere in that stretch, if you worked hard enough, if you held on tight enough, you could find something that resembled peace. Not the kind where everything goes back to the way it was. That ship had sailed and sunk. But a new kind. A quieter kind. It had been a full year since the wedding. I didn't think about him every day anymore. That was something. Sometimes I'd go 3-4 days without the memory clawing its way into my mind. And when it did creep back in, some random scent, or a white van rolling down the street, I could breathe through it. She never stopped showing up. She didn't act like it had all gone away. That was the thing I respected most. She never demanded a reset. Never once said, "Aren't we past that?" She carried it with me, every single day, without asking me to let go of something I hadn't finished unpacking. We started doing this thing, writing letters to each other on the 1st of every month. Not emails. Not text messages. Handwritten letters. We'd trade them like gifts over coffee in the morning, sometimes laughing, sometimes crying, sometimes both. In one of her letters, she wrote, "If I could go back and undo it, I would. Not just for you, but for the woman I was who thought so little of herself that she couldn't face the love you offered. You deserved better than a wedding day that got buried under guilt. But you stayed. And I'll never stop trying to be the kind of wife that makes that choice feel right." I kept that one folded in my wallet. A couple months after that, I wrote, "Some days I still hate what you did. But I don't hate you." And maybe that's what real love is, waking up beside someone whose flaws have hurt you, and deciding to keep building something anyway. Brick by brick. I'm still here. And I'm still choosing you. She cried when she read that. Hard. But she smiled through the tears. That fall, we finally took our honeymoon. Just the two of us, no guests, no shuttle vans, no chaos. We rented a cabin up in Vermont. Red leaves. Cold mornings. Long walks in silence, where the air felt clean and the world felt still. One morning, we sat by the fire drinking black coffee, wrapped in the same blanket. I had my arm around her shoulders. She had her head against my chest. And she asked me, soft as smoke, "Do you think we made it?" I didn't answer right away. Because it didn't feel like something with a finish line. It wasn't about making it. It was about choosing it. Every single morning, in all the quiet ways that no one else would ever see. I kissed the top of her head. "We're still walking," I said. "And we're walking together." She smiled, closed her eyes, and we sat there in the crackle of the fire and the hush of the woods, just being two people who had been to hell and found a way back. Not perfect. But real. And that was enough. That would always be enough.